If you run with me, I gotta work for the both of us. I'll put you in the driver's seat.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to Abatum. So last video, or the last video that I did or covered on spirituality, that was actually supposed to be one video, and when I finished recording the entire video, it was late. It was really late. I think it was probably like 3 o'clock in the morning, and you could literally tell the difference between when I'd started recording it during the day to when I'd tried to finish recording it at 2 a.m. or whatever time it was. And I just thought, you know what, I can't put out that video. I'm gonna need to record it again. So this video particularly shouldn't be as long as the one that we did last, from witchcraft to worship, even though this is kind of a follow-on, but we're not going to be, you know, chopping any more clips from the video. I'm just going to continue as if, you know, it was still connected to the other one anyway. Anyway, I hope you guys are good. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe. Press the like button if, you know, things that we talk about in this video or any of the other videos, you know, can relate to you or you feel like resonate with you in any way. Yeah, let's get into it. So yeah, as I said, following on from, you know, the other video, the video that Sarah was, you know, talking about her experience in, you know, African spirituality, we realized that she wasn't actually talking about African spirituality at all. But, you know, she did mention the Orishas. And so, you know, based on the fact that when most people think about African spirituality, majority of people kind of think back to the Orishas or think about the Orishas. I wanted to just cover this, you know, specifically, like the Yoruba tradition, just so I can kind of give people an idea of what, you know, Ifa or the Yoruba tradition actually is, so we can delve a bit deeper into that and really just put it back in its proper context. Because the reality is, like I've said in all the previous videos before, what we know about, you know, African spirituality or African sacred science is what, you know, the colonizers told us about it. And it doesn't make sense to me, you know, that people that consider themselves to be, you know, Christians or people that consider themselves to be Europeans can come and tell us about our own culture. Especially given the track record of, you know, wickedness that they've left in their wake, the brutalities that they've, you know, they've put on us as a people and as a continent, then now all of a sudden we're going to take their word as gospel for what, you know, our culture's about. That's not going to wash with me. So I'm going to be looking into this book called African Medicine, and, you know, again, it might not seem relative, but it's very relative, because again, going back to all that we've covered, you know, spirituality or, you know, sacred science isn't like it shouldn't be compartmentalized. You know, in African traditions and African cultures, everything that we did was a part of our culture. It was everything. It encompassed everything. So when we're talking about healing, which is what I would consider myself, you know, specializing in, you know, healing in every aspect, you know, spirituality plays a massive part in that. And I'm hoping that as I go through, you know, some of the details in this book regarding the Yoruba tradition, it would make a little bit more sense as well. This weather, I can't. Okay, so we're going to start on this page here, and it says the Egyptian concept of cosmology, like the Chinese doctrine of yin and yang, and the East Indian system of Tridosha, which is Pitta, Vata and Kapha. And, you know, just for those that don't know, this is basically the basis of Ayurvedic medicine. So like I said, most indigenous cultures, or all, you know, African and indigenous cultures globally, you know, spirituality is not separate from medicine. It's all, you know, it's a holistic practice. It encompasses everything. So it says they offered a comprehensive explanation of the natural forces of the universe. There were other ideals which the Egyptians developed, such as the doctrine of the soul. They believed that the soul and body were not two distinct things, but one in two different aspects, just as form is related to matter. The soul is the power that a living body possesses, and it is the end for which the body exists, the final cause of its existence. So essentially, the soul is, you know, the real you. The soul is the essence of you. The soul is what connects you to the Most High, is your divinity. And that is the reason why your body exists. Your body is only a vehicle for your soul to be able to do what it needs to do. So jumping ahead, it says the concept of universal harmony is characteristic to African thought. Africans believe there is a harmony in the universe. The circling of the planets, the tides of the earth, the growth of vegetation, the lives of animals and people are all related. All that is in the universe emanates from the same source, one universal mind. The ancient Egyptian priests looked out at the universe and noted the ratios of the different planetary cycles and counted the rhythmic periods in nature. They also calculated the ratios of the human body. They put together a sacred geometry which were a set of mathematical ratios and proportions, and they believed that these ratios, if used in the sound of music and architecture of buildings, for example pyramids, this would resonate with the life forces of the universe and thus enhance life. So that's quite self-explanatory. I think, as we go a bit further on in the video, this will make probably a bit more sense. But the reality is that, all of the things that we experience in life are, an expression of mathematical and scientific equations. There is nothing that happens in our existence, in our world, that cannot be explained by, mathematics and science. We're going to go into, the essence of, the Yoruba tradition. So I'll start from here. And, bear with me because we are definitely going somewhere. But I think this is really important for us to really read and get into. So, and it also ties in with things that we've already discussed in the previous videos. But as I go on, you kind of see everything kind of just marry up together. So it reads, when looking at Nile Valley, Egypt, so we spoke about that, where the Nile Valley is, encompasses all of where Palestine is considered to be today, all the way down through Egypt, all the way down to roughly where Ethiopia is, and maybe even down to where Kenya, Tanzania is, but that whole entire region from the top to the bottom was considered the Nile Valley. So when looking at Nile Valley, Egypt and its contributions to natural and herbal medicine, it must be understood that we are not just talking about Egypt alone. We must consider the whole continent, which extends over 4,000 miles into the geography of Africa. Many tribes and African nations contributed their share of herbal and medical wisdom. This would include Sudan, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Mali, Libya, and dozens of other African nations. The Nile Valley, however, became something of a cultural highway, which made it a great historical stopping place for wisdom and knowledge. Out of Africa came the world's first organized system of herbal and medical science. This knowledge was so profound, much of it passed from the Egyptians to the Phoenicians, the Yorubas, India, Syria, Babylon, the Middle East, the Greeks to the Romans, and from the Romans to Western Europe. 3 major herbal systems, Ayurveda, Chinese traditional medicine, and Western herbology, were extracted from the knowledge created by the priests and wise men in the Nile Valley. Early in its history and its development, Nile Valley civilization created a basic way of life that attracted teachers and priests from other parts of Africa, always enriching the original composition of the Nile Valley. By the time Yoruba people made their journey in the Nile Valley, led by the mystic prophet Orunmila, Egyptian priests had accumulated centuries of herbal and medical knowledge. The Yorubas drew from this treasure chest of wisdom and incorporated it into their religious and cultural customs. The key point in respect to the evolutionists of Yoruba medicine is that Egyptian knowledge, coupled with the earliest Nok people, produced the outcome of Yoruba herbal practices. From a conceptual standpoint, Osane herbalism is a religion, a philosophy, and a science. Born from this concept is the idea that oneness with the creative essence brings about a wholeness in the human essence. Seekers or aspirants of the system of Osane or Yoruba seek to bring themselves into alignment, which is balanced health, with his spiritual being, which is immoral reality, and his relationship with divine cause. This is achieved through herbs, spiritual baths, right living, diet rituals, and self-development, which are meant to maintain a healthy and happy life. Thus, Osane is a divine journey to the inner self, which encompasses all aspects of life. So again, this goes back to this concept of, there not being a distinction between, your body, your soul, and your spirit. They all, come together to make you as an individual. And it's all of those elements that connects you to the divinity, which we consider to be God or the Most High. So if you are, you're taking care of yourself, as a whole, that includes how you take care of your body, that includes how you take care of your spirit, that includes the herbs that you take, that includes the kind of, rituals that you do, or the kind of baths, the way you cleanse yourself, should I say, spiritually and physically. And it's all, leads us towards right living, or, righteousness, as we would call it, with regards to the Most High. So it goes on to say, the self-existent being, which in Yoruba is called Olodumare, or the one source, is believed to be responsible for creation and maintenance of heaven and earth, of man and women, and brought into being divinities and spirits called Orisha, who are believed to be his functionaries and intermediaries between mankind and the self-existent being, which is himself. It was through the Ashe, which is nature, that matter and the forces of creation evolved. Olodumare created this for a divine purpose. The union of the Orisha and the Abba, which is human development, gave birth to the dual potentiality of the human spirit. It is the goal of man to align his earthly consciousness with the Ori, which is the physical and spiritual head, in order to connect with his divine spirit. So I don't know if I should have mentioned this in the previous videos, but I spoke before about how, you know, in all the sacred science concepts, or all the sacred sciences that I've researched, you know, off the continent, there's an element of the divinity that lives in the region of your head. And, you know, in Yoruba or in Ifa, it's called your Ori. In the Akan, it's called your Kra. And, you know, this element of divinity, you know, sits inside your head, and essentially is, you know, if I want to do like a like for like, because this is the easiest way to explain to people, especially if you come out of a religious background, is essentially that the Holy Spirit. It's basically the Spirit of God that resides inside of you, that kind of gives you direction, tells you where to go and where not to go, what to do, what not to do. And it's this, you know, living in line with your intuition, your own, you know, your own divinity, your Ori, your Kra, that when you're being guided by the Most High, when you follow through with the instructions that you are given, you're basically on the path of what we consider to be righteousness. So it goes on. The 7 major Orishas, which are the angelic forces of Yoruba context, Alegba, Obatala, Oshun, Ogun, Yemoja, Shango, Oya, and others too numerous to mention. There are also many minor Orishas associated with the human body. If one looks at all of the major and minor Orishas, then there may be slightly more than 400 Orishas in the human body, according to the esoteric literature. In the herbal context, each requires special herbs and foods to bring out the life force energy that brings about their qualities. And this bringing about is a dual endeavor, as the herbalist needs to follow certain guidelines and practices to efficaciously heal or correct the Orisha imbalances. So when applying the spiritual principles of Yoruba medicine, we are dealing with what the priests call divination. This is indeed a mysterious system in Yoruba healing, where for centuries it has been considered the highest form of religion. What exactly is Yoruba divination? In the language of the Ifa, divination is to invite the incarnate to come to form or to show itself to us through spirit or energy. Thousands of years ago, the Yoruba healers said that we are multi-dimensional beings of energy and spirit, whose physical body is a part of a larger dynamic system of energy. In other words, there is an entire cosmos within the human body. And so this is where we get this concept of, this light. It just keeps going in and out. But yeah, this is where we get this concept of, you know, as above, so below. Again, this is a term that has been, you know, taken and appropriated by, you know, Satanists or, you know, occultists, European occultists. But all it basically means is that whatever we have in the cosmos, like in the sky, you know, we have the planets, the sun, the moon, the stars. You have essentially a smaller cosmos, or cosmos, living inside of your body, and everything that goes on in the outer, you know, cosmos on a macro level, you know, happens inside of you on a micro level. That's what we mean by as above, so below. As within, so without. Whatever you put inside of yourself, whatever you attach yourself to internally, is what is going to be produced in you externally. So it continues. It has energies, its frequency of vibrations, and the Orisha network system. These Orishas are the invisible intelligences governing the human body and its functions. In fact, consciousness itself is a form of energy. It is considered the highest form of energy in the universe, and it is integrally connected to divine consciousness. The supreme ruler and God of this great universe is the consciousness in which man says, I am the divine. We are linked to the cosmos through our spirit body and react to changes in the planets, as well as to the moods and illnesses of others, to thought, emotion, sound, light, color, magnetic fields, the seasons, cycles of the moon, tides, thunderstorms, strong winds, and even the spirits of the ancestors. When there is a change in the universe and environment, a resonance is produced in the spirit of the human body, which in turn affects the physical body. It is through our spiritual bodies that we invite contact with the divine. So again, as we go a bit further on in the video, you'll kind of see how all of these things are linked, because I'm going to go into, you know, a bit of astrology and how astrology links to the human body as well. But the Orishas. So Orisha as a term is actually the combination of 2 Yoruba words. It says, I discovered that the root word is from the Egyptian god Osiris, who had other qualities. Osh meaning many, and Iri meaning to do or many-eyed. Osiris came to mean omniscient. Ori, which is the reflective spark of human consciousness embedded in human essence, and Sswa, which is the ultimate potentiality of that consciousness to enter into or assimilate itself into the divine consciousness. From this idea, we can see that given the right encouragement of the human consciousness, man can heal himself So this is talking about physically. Man can heal himself along with the use of herbs and foods as special inducements. From this standpoint, the Orisha assist in the development of Sswa Pele, which means balanced character. This is the premise of true Yoruba medicine. The connection between one's consciousness, which is your Ori, your Kra, and one's behavior, meaning what you do, is clearly seen as a way of maintaining a correct attitude towards nutrition and lifestyles in order to ward off sickness, negative spirits, and disease. So can you see how, you know, this aspect of, you know, holistic medicine, and, you know, how important it is to eat the right foods and to make sure that you're using the right herbs in order to maintain your body, is literally a spiritual practice within itself. And I just want to put out there, you know, based on what I've just read about, you know, having, you know, an understanding of what it means to have a soul, to be in contact with your Ori, your Kra, is very closely connected to your behavior and, you know, your consciousness. And there has to be an element of right living in order to connect yourself to divinity. So now that we've broken this down, you know, from the standpoint of this is the original context, or this is the original concept of what Ifa is, or what Yoruba tradition is, please explain to me what part of this is evil, because I'd love for somebody to explain it to me. So as I said, each of the different sacred science systems that you can find all over the African continent, they all come down to this. There's slight variations, you know, there's different names, because obviously we're dealing with different languages and different peoples, but all of them come back to this very same concept. And it also goes back to what I was saying in the previous video about there is no one specific way to do spirituality. If we're talking about, you know, spirituality being a reflection of the cosmos, or, you know, spirituality being a reflection of nature, there is no one person on this planet that can put together, you know, a religious system or a spiritual system and then try and enforce that system on everybody else, because we are not the same. We are the same, but we're not the same. We have different expressions of, you know, who we are as people. We have no business trying to force our way on somebody else. But then if we were, you know, tolerant of one another and truly, you know, understanding how connected we are, then we'd see the fluidity and the beauty in all of these variations, which actually come from one source. And this is a concept that Europeans could never grasp, because they were not connected to this. They have no connection to this. So rather they took it and they used it to try and dominate other people. So I'm going to be looking in this book. This is another book called The Sacred Tradition in Ancient Egypt. As I said, you know, if you've had the chance to look at the video or watch the video that I recommended before, called Taking the Spookism Out of African Spirituality, you will see that all of the sacred science systems really go back to, you know, this Nile Valley civilization, which we today will call Egypt. So I'm just going to read a couple of pages from here, and I'm going to move on and kind of show you how, you know, astrology is so important, because not only does it connect us to, you know, the Most High and divinity, but it also connects us to ourselves. Well, we'll get into that. So it reads: the legendary body of astrological knowledge known by the ancient Egyptians was said to be considerable by classical travelers in the later periods. We have specific examples of only two forms of pure Egyptian astrology, as Greco-Roman practices are often mixed with and represented as a former tradition. Political astrology existed, a practice concerned with the affairs of groups and government, or natal astrology, concerned with the destiny of individuals, was also practiced, though in a much different form than today. Emphasis was placed on the power of the planets and stars in the mundane sky at birth, rather than their placements in the signs of the Zodiac. And so, just as it says here, you know, astrology in its purest form is linked to, you know, ancient Egypt, but there is a Greco-Roman form which most people are familiar today. So when you say astrology, that's what most people think of. We think of, you know, the Romans and the Greeks, but you have to remember that they didn't come up with this concept. They didn't create any of this. They rather took it, they changed the names, they changed some of the signs, and they adopted it for themselves. So I'm just going to show you a picture. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but I will put it on the screen so you can see it properly. But this is, you know, the original Zodiac with the Neteru, or you could even say the Orishas, because the Orishans come from here as well. But basically the Neteru, or the gods, whatever you want to call it, are connected to each of the the signs of the zodiac, and you can find the original picture of the zodiac sign in one of the temples in Egypt today. If you were to go there today, you'd find it. And so this is the oldest version of the zodiac in its existence. So this is the zodiac here, and as I said, I'll put like a proper picture up so you can see it. But you'll find this. It's called the Dendera, and you'll find it in the temple of Heter. So just as a side note, just remember that the Egyptians, or the ancient Egyptians, were the first to introduce the names of the 12 gods, and the Greeks borrowed their names from them. We spoke about this in a previous video. But anyway, in astrological philosophy, each sign of the zodiac represents a cosmic principle in action, as expressed in a phase of human experience and the solar cycle throughout the year. For example, the sign of Libra represents the principle of joining and balancing, as expressed in the social institution of marriage and the seasonal equality of day and night at the autumnal equinox, which traditionally marks the beginning of the sign. Similarly, the Egyptians recognized that each of the Neteru, or the gods, represent a phase in nature and human experience that functions in a well-ordered scheme of the life cycle. Thus, the Neteru were associated with the signs of the zodiac in later ages to demonstrate the profound metaphor of spiritual unfoldment that is symbolized by the sun's journey through the constellations and the seasons of the year. So as I was saying before about, everything that we see in nature, everything that we see in spirituality can be observed, or kind of broken down mathematically and scientifically. That is basically what astrology is. There is no wickedness in it. Astrology is literally the breaking down of the signs, the seasons, the moon, the stars, everything in the sky, and everything that happens in the cosmos has a direct impact on us here on Earth. And having a thorough understanding of all of these elements not only allows us to align ourselves properly, with whatever's going on in the cosmos, to make sure that we're at the right place at the right time doing the right things, but it also allows us to take care of, ourselves on a physical level, because whatever is going on out there is going to affect us in here. Macro, micro. So again, when we think of, we've spoken about, Christianity and the concept of Christianity being a new concept, essentially, that was, put together by the European nations in order to dominate other cultures. But we know, I think I mentioned it in one of the previous videos, I can't remember which one now, but I was talking about how, as Africans and indigenous people, we have a connection to nature, and we have a connection to the Most High that, Europeans just don't have. And there's a particular tribe or group of people called the Dogon in Mali that have records of astrological advancement or astrological knowledge that Europeans only came into a couple of 100 years ago. They knew about the presence of a star called Sirius B and Sirius A, and these people have never had any access to telescopes or any sort of apparatus that would allow them to see into the stars. But the Dogon of Mali and many other cultures on the African continent have a full understanding of the cosmos, being able to know where the stars are, their cyclical patterns, etc., etc. But how are they able to know all of this information without being able to see it with their naked eye? And this is what I was saying to you about, the connection that we have to divinity. As African and indigenous people, we have a connection to divinity that Europeans don't have. And we are able to see things without physically. We're able to see through, divination, through connection to the divinities. We're able to see without physically seeing, and we're able to know without literally knowing from a book. I think I mentioned this in one of the videos in the book, the Metuneta, when it breaks all of this down. So I'm just going to read this, this article, and I'll link it for you below. But people need to start thinking to themselves that, again, we've been taught this concept that African spirituality and African sacred science is evil and wicked. But the very same things that the Europeans are doing, with regards to, exploring the cosmos and finding out all of these things about our world, we've already known this thousands of years prior. And so really and truly, who has, the closest connection to divinity if we're able to know all of these things inherently without using apparatus to find this out? So anyway, I'll read it. So it says, believed to be the progenies of ancient Egypt, again, back to Egypt. The Dogon people who live in the Central Plateau region of Mali are among the few African tribes who have managed to preserve their culture over the years. They are renowned for their knowledge about the Sirius system, which dates back to 3,200 BC, long before scientists discovered it in 1862. According to them, the Sirius A, which is the brightest star in Earth's night sky, had a much dimmer companion, Sirius B, which has a 50-year elliptical orbit around the bright Sirius A and is extremely dense. From oral tradition, the Dogon confirmed their affiliation with extraterrestrial bodies which visited Earth some years ago. According to them, ugly amphibious beings in the form of mermaids and mermen from the Sirius system known as Nomos visited Earth. The Nomos lived on a planet that rotated around other stars in the Sirius system. The Dogon recount that the Nomos, after descending on Earth in an arc-like structure, gave them information about the Sirius system and the Earth's solar system, that Jupiter has 4 major moons, Saturn has rings, and that all planets orbit around the Sun. The Dogon commemorate the Sirius A's 50-year elliptical orbit around Sirius B with the Sswa celebration held every 60 years. It is unclear why the Dogon celebrate the rotational year of the Sirius B every 60 years and not 50. However, since the last Sswa celebration was in 1967, the next celebration is expected to happen in 2027, that the celebration of the Sirius B's rotations come to renew the Earth. And I think what's really interesting about this, if you research it a bit further, you'll find that, you know, as it says, they celebrate this every 60 years, but they have, you know, they have record of these celebrations that they've documented, I think in a cave or, you know, in a specific place in their region, and it goes back thousands and thousands of years. That every 60 years, it's almost like they make a mark, but it goes back thousands of years. So before the Bible, before Christianity, before Islam, before Judaism, before all of these things that we've been presented with, these people already knew how our solar system functioned. Let that sink in. So, you know, when we're talking about, you know, astrology being, you know, wicked and astrology being this, that and the other, again, we're not saying that it can't be used, you know, for nefarious purposes, but the idea of knowing, you know, your astrological placements, or, you know, even your birth chart, I'll speak a little bit about that, is basically so you have a complete knowledge of self. So what is a birth chart? A birth chart is basically, you know, your astrological placements at the time that you were born. So for example, you take a date, let's just take any date, let's say the 3rd of March 1960. You can go online, because we have, you know, we have technology now. You can go online, you type in your date of birth, and if you know your time of birth, that's even more accurate. But you put in your date of birth, your time of birth, and it will come up with a chart that basically shows you where all of the planets were astrologically at the time of your birth. And it goes into essentially a chart which tells you where your planets are with regards to, you know, the astrological placements. So, you know, your Aries, Libra, you know, all of the astrological placements, and, you know, based on those elements, it tells you essentially who you are and the sort of destiny that you're going to have. Now, this is literally, it's not necessarily to predict the future, but it's literally to give you an understanding of who you are as a person. And this is why I feel like this whole series really is to get people to come back to a knowledge of self. If you know who you are inherently, imagine if every person born is given their birth chart. They know what their weaknesses are. They know what their strengths are. They know what they're able to do. They know what their gifts and talents are. You wouldn't be sitting in a classroom for 25 years of your life learning something that has absolutely nothing to do with you. To go into a role or a job that somebody else has told you this is the way to make money. It's like, really and truly, when I think of it now, to me, the Western system, the Western paradigm, you know, Christianity as a whole, to me are like destiny stealers. They're like destiny thieves. Every single soul, every single person born upon this earth, African and indigenous person born, has come with a mission almost. You've come with a destiny, something that you need to fulfill. Because we are outside of our cultural framework, outside of our knowledge of self, we don't know who we are. We've rejected everything that belongs to us, and we've clung onto these false religions and these false ideologies. Everything that belongs to us, we've demonized and pushed it away. We have no idea who we are. And we go into these religious systems, we're told what to do, we're told what to think, we're told what to believe. We don't have any autonomy, we don't have any, you know, sense of self. We go into these churches and we spend years, decades of our lives, you know, pledging 10% or more of our finances into a system that is doing nothing for us, you know, as a whole people. And then we're literally been making decisions, you know, people that we marry, places that we live, based on this religious system. So for example, when I was in the church, I got married because I believed that was the right thing to do. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I got married, you know, quickly because I was like, this is where my values are as a woman. This is where my being a wife, me being in marriage. So I'm married now. When I'm looking for places to live, I'm looking, you know, to buy properties, you know, within the confines of me being able to access my church easily. I'm not thinking about, you know, traveling abroad. I'm not thinking about going places and exploring and, you know, getting to know different cultures and, you know, even my culture, because I was told that the only thing I needed to focus on was Christ culture. No other cultures are necessary or, you know, are important. You know, you put your identity away and, you know, focus on Christ culture. So you put all of that away, and the only time that you think about, you know, traveling outside of your honeymoon is to go and do outreaches, telling other people about this religious system that you're involved on, proselytize to them, you know, get them on board with your religion, because you are the arbiter of truth. Your way is the only way, and the only time that you would think about even settling outside of, you know, the country that you were born in is if you've been sent out to start another church. Can you not see how people are being controlled? So this is the last book that I'm going to refer to, and we're getting towards the end of the video now. And this is called The Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation. So as I was saying before, the cosmos is essentially a reflection of, you know, our human bodies. Every single system that we have in our body, I think we have 12 in total. So we're talking about, you know, the endocrine system, which is your what controls your hormones. Then you have your lymphatic system, you have your digestive system. All of these systems are connected to a planet in the cosmos. And, you know, when I started this series, I had in mind to like go into like detail and explain all of this bit by bit by bit, you know, how it relates to the sacred science of the Akan, because obviously that's my culture, and that's, you know, a culture and a practice that I've been studying for about 2 years. And then I thought, you know what, you know how the Bible talks about, you know, don't cast your pearl before swine. I really don't feel like it's appropriate for me to do all of that on YouTube, because I just feel like if people want it, they would go and seek it out. So I'm probably gonna, you know, do these videos and do these teachings on some sort of like Patreon service or whatever. So people that truly want to know about it can find out about it. But either way, every single system is connected. Every single one of our bodily systems is connected to a planet in the cosmos. And so whatever's going on in the cosmos is going to affect us on a micro level inside of our bodies. But the reason why I wanted to refer to this book is because the author of this book basically linked all of the biblical stories and biblical characters and pulled out the esoteric meanings and what it means for the human body and basically how to heal the human body. So very, you know, similarly to this book, the African medicine, and it's talking about the Yoruba culture and how, you know, different herbs relate to different Orishas, and, you know, they're able to heal the body having this knowledge. This is essentially the quote-unquote European version of that, because the Bible, as much as I, you know, I don't refer to the Bible as truth, there is a lot of truth embedded in it, because most of what was in there, or most of what is written in there, is esoteric knowledge. It's not supposed to be taken literally. And I just wanted to read a few excerpts of here so you can understand exactly what I mean. So I'm going to start on page 22, and it reads, and it's titled Esoteric Chemistry. So it says, in this strenuous age of reconstruction, while God's created compounds are forming a new race in the morning of a new age, all who desire physical regeneration should strive by every means within their reach to build new tissue, nerve fluids, and brain cells, thus literally making new bottles for the new wine. For be it known to all men that the word wine, as used in scripture, means blood, when used in connection with man. It also means the sap of trees and juice of vegetables or fruit. The parable of turning water into wine at the marriage of Cana in Galilee is a literal statement of a process taking place every heartbeat in the human organism. Galilee means a circle of water or fluid, the circulatory system, and Cana means a dividing place, which is the lungs. In the Greek, a place of reeds or cells of lungs that vibrate sound. Biochemists have shown that food does not form blood, but simply furnishes the mineral base by setting free the organic or cell salts contained in all foodstuff. The organic part, oil, fibrin, albumin, etc. contained in food, is burnt or digested in the stomach and intestinal tract to furnish motive power to operate the human machine and draw air into the lungs, thus into arteries and air carriers. Therefore, it is clearly proved that air, which is spirit, unites with the minerals and forms blood, proving that the oil albumin found in blood is created every breath at the marriage in Cana of Galilee. In the new age, we will need perfect bodies to correspond with the higher vibration or motion of the new blood, for old bodies, which are old bottles, cannot contain the new wine. Another allegorical statement typifying the same truth, which reads, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth," which means a new mind and a new body. So basically, he goes throughout the book and he breaks down each astrological sign. So again, depending on the day that you're born, you're born with a certain placement within the cosmos, and that also affects, how your body functions and how your body works. It literally determines the organic cell salts that your particular body needs in order to stay well. So, sometimes when we go into periods of disease or, illness or sickness, it's not necessarily something that we've, become sick with because of, any external factors. Sometimes it's internal in the sense that, we're not doing what we need to do in order to take care of our bodies, and therefore we're putting our own cells into a place or a space of degeneration. So obviously this book is quite big. So, if you're interested in reading it, by all means you can get it and read it yourself. But I'm just going to read, the first zodiac sign, which is Aries. And that's between, March the 21st and April the 21st. Just so you can get an understanding of, what Aries represents, especially in the biblical sense. So it says Aries, which is the Lamb of God. Astrologers have for many years waited for the coming discovery of a planet to rule the head or brain of man, symbolized in the grand man of the heavens by the celestial sign of the Zodiac, regnant from March 21st to April the 21st. This sign is known as Aries, the ram or the lamb. Angles of planets cause effects or influences. The priesthood of the Middle Ages, wishing to control the ignorant masses, personified the influence of planetary aspects, positions, or angles, and transposed the letters so they spelled angel. Upon this one slippery cog, the stupendous frauds of ecclesiasticism were built. So basically, the ancient, or the Romans, the Greeks, they knew that, all of this knowledge represented the cosmos and how it relates to the human body. But because they wanted to use it to dominate people, and they wanted to use it to destroy, black and indigenous knowledge and understanding, they basically changed some of this knowledge. And this is the foundation in which they built the church, where everything was now to be taken literally instead of esoterically. With the false teachings of the church ingrained into the fibre of the brain of man, is it strange that for years before the advent of a new planet, with its added influence, the brain cells of Earth's inhabitants should be disturbed, as the effects of the coming storms disturb the fluids and mechanism of the weather forecaster's laboratory? The coming of Christ and the end of the world has been preached from every street corner for several years, and thousands, millions are pledging themselves to try and live as Christ lived, according to their concept of his life. No great movement of the people ever occurs without a scientific cause. The optic thalamus, meaning light of the chamber, is the inner or third eye situated in the center of the head. It connects the pineal gland and the pituitary body. The optic nerve starts from this eye single, which is where we get the scripture, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body will be full of light." The optic thalamus is the Aries planet, and when fully developed through physical generation, it lifts the initiate from the kingdom of earth, the animal desire, below the solar plexus to the pineal gland that connects the cerebellum, the temple of the spiritual ego, with the optic thalamus, which is the third eye. By this regenerative process, millions of dormant cells of the brain are resurrected and set in operation, and then man no longer sees through a glass darkly, but with the eye of spiritual understanding. In ancient law, Aries was known as the Lamb of God, or Gad, which represents the head or brain. The brain controls and directs the mind and body of a man. The brain itself, however, is a receiver operated upon celestial influences or angles, which they change to angels, and must operate according to the directing force or intelligence or of its source of power. Man has been deficient in understanding because his brain receiver did not vibrate to certain subtle influences. The dynamic cells in the grey matter of the nerves were not finely attuned and did not respond, hence sin or falling short of understanding. A deficiency in this brain constituent means sin, or a falling short of judgment or proper comprehension. With the advent of the Aries Lord, God or planet, cell salts are rapidly coming to fore as the basis of all healing. Then it goes on to say, Aries gems are amethyst and diamond. The astral colours are white and rose pink. In Bible alchemy, Aries represents Gad, which is the seventh son of Jacob, and means armed and prepared. Thus it is said, when in trouble or in danger, keep your head. In the symbolism of the New Testament, Aries corresponds to the disciple Thomas. Aries people are natural doubters until they figure something out for themselves. And it literally goes through every single zodiac sign and explains, how it connects to the human body, how it connects to, the biblical principles in the Old Testament and also the biblical principles in the New Testament. And so, once again, just pulling from all the videos that we've done so far up until this point, you can see once again that there is no wickedness and there is no evil in astrology except what they want to convince you of in order to keep you away from it. They have to demonize everything that would empower you and would allow you to see things as they're supposed to be seen, especially if you're a Black and indigenous person. Because like I said before, and we'll go into this in the last video that we're going to do on melanin, there is a level of physiology that allows Black and indigenous people to connect to divinity on a level that Europeans can never get to. This is also why Easter, or the celebration of Easter, is celebrated at this time of the year, because it literally it venerates the coming of the new cycle in terms of nature and the regeneration of plants and everything. That's a resurrection in itself, coming out from winter into spring. And it also venerates the fact that in the zodiac, Aries is the first sign that represents the resurrection of man, like we just read. So the one thing that I really want you to take away from this video is that darkness does not equate to evil. When we think about darkness, and again, I'll go into this in detail in the next video, the last video on melanin, as I said. But darkness is not the absence of light. Darkness is literally the absorption of light. Whenever you see something depicted as black, when you look at something and it's black, it's because that particular object or that particular subject matter has absorbed every single angle of light coming from the sun, and so you see it as dark. But again, we've been convinced that darkness is evil and light is good. Everything has been turned on its head. Also, chaos is not the opposite of order. Again, this is another misrepresentation from European occultism. Chaos is not the opposite of order. The opposite of order is non-order, meaning something that just hasn't been constructed yet. So for example, if I buy something from IKEA, usually when you buy stuff from IKEA, it comes in like boxes and you don't have to fix all of these things yourself. But it gives you all of the materials that you need. It gives you the nails, it gives you the pieces, and then you essentially have to put this thing together. When you open the box and you have all of the materials in front of you, that is non-order. It means that the table, the bookcase, whatever it is that you've bought isn't in its proper form yet. It's not functioning yet, but all of the material that you need is there. So non-order is the opposite of order. Chaos is a creation of chaotic people. Chaos is what is brought into the world by people who are not in divine order of the cosmos. So, as we've gone through, this video series, I'm really hoping that you're starting to really understand that, religion, or, the Abrahamic religions, because they're the ones really that have taken hold over the world, is really the biggest spell that has been given to humanity, and literally is the biggest form of witchcraft. Because how can you take all of this wonderful knowledge of our universe and divinity and how everything relates to each other, create a religion out of it, and then demonize absolutely everything, and then champion yourself as the arbiter of truth, and you've got billions of people all over the world believing it? That is literally the biggest form of witchcraft. And so for all the Christians who love to apply the term witchcraft to everything that isn't Christian, this is the video, or this is declaration, basically just telling you to stop it. Because Christianity by definition is also witchcraft. And there's someone who I consider to be an elder called Joshua Maponga. He said it best when he said people should stop saying this is witchcraft, and start asking which craft. Because it's either an African craft, it's an indigenous craft, it's an original craft, or it's a European craft. No, there's nothing that anybody does that has one right of way over the other. What we should really be asking is it African? Is it original? Is it organic? Is it indigenous? Or is it chaotic? Is it European? Is it distorted? That's the questions that we need to be asking at this point. There is no salvation, there is no liberation, and there is no freedom for an African and an indigenous person in the biggest spell given to humanity called religion. It doesn't exist. Because as I gave you the examples as I did before, when you subscribe yourself to any of these ideologies, you're no longer, an autonomous human being who is able to make decisions with his God-given Ori, his Kra, in his own mind. You're now being dictated to people who are telling you what to do with your life, believing that somehow this is the mandate from God. It's all in the house. It's all in the Christian church. So, again, we spoke about in the last video about how, as much as our sacred sciences are, connected to divinity, as much as, our sacred sciences champion righteousness and right living and, good character and the development of good character, there are some wicked and evil practices that also go on within African sacred science. And if you are unaware of yourself and you don't know who you are, you can end up, similar to Sswa, going into things that have absolutely nothing to do with you. When we think about ancestral spirits or, just spirits in general, the reality is that just like you can go in our society today, you can meet people who are, who are good-mannered, good-willed, have good intentions. You also meet people who are off-key, who are chaotic, who have, who are wicked at the core, who have evil purposes and evil mindsets to do things to other people. It's the same way you have those same dynamics in the spiritual realm. Like I said before, like in the physical realm, we can only see like 0.0035% of reality. A lot of what is in existence is unseen to the human eye. And so the same way that we have, like I said, malevolent characters in the physical world, is the same way you can have malevolent characters in the spiritual realm. And so if you do not know yourself, you don't know your ancestry, you don't know who you're connected to, and you're creating all of these altars and you're pouring libations and you're doing all of these, rituals to spirits that you have absolutely no idea about, you have no connection to, why wouldn't they take advantage of you? The same way that people, physical people that you meet on a day-to-day basis can take advantage of you, violate you, abuse you, is the same way that spirits that you have no affiliation to can take advantage of you and abuse you. And the solution to this is to go back to your own. So for example, I'm a Ghanaian woman, and I know that my roots are in the Akan, sacred science system. I have absolutely no business practicing Sswa because that doesn't have anything to do with me. And that isn't to say that, Sswa has any wickedness within it. Like we just went through it just now. It doesn't. But spirit genetically, it doesn't relate to me. It doesn't relate to my ancestry and where my ancestors came from, what my ancestors practiced. And so I always tell people, like, when you first, get into this understanding, this knowledge, it can be a little bit overwhelming because there's so much to unlearn and relearn. But start off with, who am I? Where do I come from? Start off with your ancestry. So, as a Ghanaian woman, as I said, I practice the Akan sacred science, the Akan sacred system. If you're a Nigerian, then you should be looking into, the Yoruba, sacred science, or the Igbo sacred science. If you are, Congolese, you should be looking into the Congo cosmology. If you are South African, then you should be looking into the Sangoma and, the South African sacred science system. And so for me, it just makes sense for anybody who's coming out of, Abrahamic religions. Don't just go and dabble into anything. The same way you wouldn't just be, inviting strangers to come and live in your home. Why are you inviting spirits you have no awareness of into your home? You need to find out who you're spirit genetically connected to and connect back to those, because that is where your protection is. And this is why it's so easy to demonize things that we have no idea about. When you have knowledge of something, then you're able to put it in its proper format, in its proper context, and it's able to benefit you rather than destroy you. It's our culture that links us to our divinity. In your culture, you have community, you have elders, you have wisdom, you have rites of passage, you have proverbs and wisdom, things that have been passed through the ages, oral traditions that literally keep you. And I just want to press the point that ignorance, for a Black and indigenous person, ignorance is literally your greatest enemy. I think the biggest takeaway that I want you guys to kind of like really grasp, I mentioned this before, is that, you know, we based this video, or this you know, the Witchcraft to Worship video, based on a video that Wumi Bello did with this lady called Sswa. And, you know, the whole point of the video was to warn people away from African spirituality, but she hadn't linked herself to one African deity at all. As far as I understand, she is, you know, she's from Zimbabwe, but she didn't go into, you know, her own culture to find out about how she should practice her spirituality. And this is what ignorance does. There is no evil in knowledge. There's no evil in understanding, but it is important to know exactly what it is that you're getting into, because it's knowledge that provides safety. When we come into this world and, you know, we want to carry out whatever it is that we want to do, the greatest, you know, tool in order to do that is to have a knowledge of self. Knowing yourself, like I said, knowing your birth chart, knowing your ancestry, knowing your spirogenetic line, it grounds you in your destiny and allows you to do whatever it is that you were sent here to do for your community. Not, oh, you come into this world, you become a worker ant, you go to school, you go to university, you get into a job, and now all you're doing is serving European interests. You have done nothing for your people, your community at all. And this is the cycle that we have today. And yeah, it's sometimes I sit down and think to myself, like, is there any point even talking about this? But there is, because there is a time coming when this system is going to fall. It's scientific and mathematical fact. Everything that goes up must come down. And so eventually, the dynamic that we see today, where, you know, religion really takes over, you know, the precedence of, you know, Black and indigenous culture, that is going to come to an end one day. But you have to start asking the question, you know, to yourself, where do you see yourself in this paradigm? Where do you see yourself in this cosmic dance? Because everybody at this moment in time, as I'm speaking to you right now, you're playing a role in all of this. And where would you want to be? What part do you want to play? Do you want to be a non-playing character, like I said before, an NPC, just walking around in a video game, not really doing anything, not really making any movements in life? Or are you so afraid of what other people will say? You're so afraid to, you know, denounce Christianity. You're so afraid to denounce Islam because you're afraid of, you know, what your friends would say, what your peers would say. But what do you say? What do you want to lie down on your deathbed, or what do you want to tell your grandchildren about what you were able to do to further your people, your community? As I said before, you know, the Abrahamic religions are really thieves of destiny. They're nothing more than death cults that have sought to steal, kill, and destroy. And I find it so interesting to me that is the description that they gave the devil, but this is literally what they've done and what they continue to do. It might not be comfortable for some people. It might not be something that many people will be able to understand at face value, but this is the reason why I put this series together. But me personally, me and my house, I'm going to follow my own culture. The culture that was passed down to me genetically, spiritually, and I'm going to do everything I can to teach my children what I learned late. So whatever it is that they've been brought here to do by the Most High, that they'll be able to do it without the obstruction of any, you know, indoctrination or demonization of who they are and what they will always be. So, like I spoke about, you know, in the video before this, with regards to my personal testimony and my marriage and all of these other things that happen, the source of this, the root of all of this are generational curses. The Abrahamic religions are generational curses that we've passed on and on and on and on because we believed it was the right thing to do. But once you come into this knowledge and you come into this understanding that, you know, everything's been turned in its head, what are you going to do? Me personally, I'm going to be a generational curse breaker. The same way that I suffered in certain things, you know, inside of the church, my children would never have to go through that because they will know who they are. They will know who they are. They will know how to choose, you know, partners, looking at the characters of people that they may date or come into contact with. They will know how to choose friends based on the characters of people that they come into contact with. They would know where to go, when to go, because they understand that their intuition is their kra, their Orisha speaking to them, and they'll be able to honor that. They will know the right foods that they should and shouldn't be eating in order to keep their bodies, you know, aligned, to keep their bodies well. Like I said, all of this thing is holistic. But going back to the question, what are you going to do? So just to end this video, I'm going to read this quote again. I'm going to read this series of quotes again. This is from another, you know, someone else that I consider to be an elder in, you know, the sacred science community. It says, no Abrahamic religion gives a true depiction of our story. In fact, they're all well scripted, heavily usurped lies. Your theology dictates your psychology. So how you perceive divinity is how you see reality. Therefore, you must have a cultural concept of God. The Western concept of God is totalitarian, misogynistic, jealous and warmongering, just like the behavior of their government. Culture expresses your relationship with divinity based on your ecology, which are your surroundings, your biology, meaning your body, your region, and ancestry, meaning your bloodline. It's how you articulate the presence of God and its creations. That's why venerating your ancestors and the elements in nature is the highest praise that you can give to God. Worshipping the God of your ancestors' enemies is a complete conquest of your consciousness, and it disables the gifts in your DNA. The Christian redemption fable is based on blood sacrifice. Accepting Jesus as your savior gives the Caucasoid vicarious atonement by permitting the forgiveness of their murderous crimes and their debt to you, allowing their sins to be washed away in the blood of your ancestors. One thing we must overstand and not underestimate about the Caucasoid is its capacity for war. They are inherently, psychologically and biologically a warmongering species of people. They were literally genetically manufactured for war. It's the only culture they have. So, being you, having now digested all of this information, you have to now ask yourself, are you going to practice your own culture? Or are you going to practice the culture of somebody else's? Not just somebody else, but someone who came, conquered and destroyed those that came before you in order to keep you in domination, to keep you in indoctrination. I'll see you guys in the last one, the next one. A is for melanin. And if you've got any questions, let me know below in the comments. And I'll see you guys in the next video.